Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This is the first week after the expansion. I have to be honest, it's been so busy at my real life job that I have not been able to do a lot of EVE Online last week, and so I'm not really up to date on exactly what's been going on, what's been going wrong potentially, and the market impact, no idea. It will all be an exploration during this EVE Talk. As always, we'll start with a quick look at the New Eden store, and there are no sales here, but there is something new. We see 3 new Gila skins, and they are absolutely amazing. Look at this Gila Abyss Afterglow skin. Very cool. Definitely something that is quite unique in its pattern and things like that. Next up, we have the second most cool skin in my opinion. Here is the Firestorm skin. Look at that, these golden markings here. Then you've got that nice fiery effect to the side, but that is definitely a rather unique and very shiny color for the Gila. And then here, the final one, the best one in my opinion. The Gila Abyssal Thunderstorm skin. Look at that. You've got like an electric effect at the front. Look at the pattern here. You've got a thunder strike going a lightning strike going all over the ship. It's got these effects on the side here. So cool. Yeah, incredible. Very nice skins in my opinion, yeah, they might actually be worth the ISK. Very interesting tactic here as well from CCP. I don't want to give them bad ideas, but make abyssal content. You have the very best chip for that, which is the Gila. Make incredible skins for it. You also have the bundle actually. You can get all 3 of them for 995 ISK plex. Very interesting. Wish it were ISK, but it is for plex unfortunately. But yeah, if these come on sale, I'll be very tempted to grab them myself for the full price. I don't know, I'm patient enough to wait for these, but these are incredibly beautiful. And yeah, the Gila is the meta for the Abyss, so create some awesome skins that should sell really well. Next step, nerf the Gila so that maybe like Amar laser ships or something like that become the meta, and then create awesome skins for that new faction cruiser that becomes the new meta. Let's not give him too many bad ideas, but yeah, these are incredibly beautiful, especially this Thunderstorm skin. That in my opinion is the winner of this of these 3 new Gila skins here. Next up, we'll just jump straight into the market. As I've said, I don't know too much about what's been happening, so we'll start with some plex and stuff at 3 minutes. 300 like that, and as always we'll start with plex themselves that are hesitating a little bit, at least in Jeddah, are at 3.4 million for the sellers and 3.3 million for the buyers, so not a lot of margin, but also not the smallest that we've seen. If we go to the player owned rate hubs, they're down to 3,350,000 ISK for the sellers, and the buyers are staying around 3.3 million, just going up a little bit in fact. So from player owned trade up, look at that margin, only what would that be, 34,000 ISK or something like that, and in GTA itself it's 100,000 ISK margin. So this is clearly some hesitation. You can see it on the chart as well. We're basically now flattening out at the tail end here around 3.3 million. It's, you know, same peak as last year except a month earlier. Are you expecting that to be the peak? Then this is definitely the time to sell your plex that you've bought hopefully last summer. You should get a nice profit out of that. Or are you patient? Do you expect perhaps some moves in nullsec, some big action there? Then we could actually see a second spike. I think that is possible, but it's really dependent on the player's appetite for war in nullsec at the moment. Next up, we have the multiple pilot training certificate going down in price a little bit. Could also be perhaps the reason why plex is hesitating right now, of course. And I think the main reason is that there is this special action at the moment, or there was during last week, where you had this double training potential. Another thing to note is that we got like a first login reward, which was skill points. So all of that might just lower the demand for skill points in general. So multiple pilot training certificates going down in price here a little bit because, well, if you get free skill points from CCP just for logging in, you know, that's very nice for all of those skill point farms, and there might be less need for the multiple pilot training certificates. And there was a special action around multiple pilot training as well during last week at least. So 1.2 billion for the sellers, 1.17 billion for the buyers. The skill extractors are also flattening out at the today's price so far is a little bit higher though, so that must be because we're selling in JITA then. 382 million in JITA, 376 in the player owned trade hubs, and 373 million is for the buyers. Look at that, that's zero margin when you're selling and buying from the player owned trade hubs. That's really absolutely nothing. So the real question is, where will we go from there? Could go either way, but the skill extractors are also flat. Now, the more interesting ones ought to be the skill injectors. So let's start with the large skill injectors. And this is a little bit counter to my thinking. If CCP gives out free SP, you would expect that there might be a little bit less demand for SP and thus lower prices for the large skill injectors. But it looks like those are finally breaking away here a little bit. And I was telling you guys, seeing in July, August, you had the bottom for plex, and then we just went up straight up until this point. At some point, that should come through in the large scale injectors as well. They had a massive backlog because of all the actions that CCP did with multiple pilot train certificates, but here it's coming through for the first time, and so this was definitely a delayed opportunity to buy some large scale injectors for less than 700 million ISK. They are now selling for 729 million. Buyers are coming in at 714, and in JITA they're already up to 744 million for the sellers of large scale injectors. So that is definitely, I think, the overarching force here is the increased prices of plex that is finally starting to show through in the skill injector markets. One thing to keep in mind, if you're looking for that ceiling, that best price where you might be able to sell at above 800 million ISK last year, well, be a little bit careful on that front, knowing now that CCP is willing to give out extra SP for those daily login rewards. That might actually temper all the demand and thus the potential peaks, I think, for the skill injectors themselves. Small skill injectors going up even more violently on the chart, so we would have been able to buy these pretty easily for I don't know, 145, something like that. Buyers are coming in still at 140. Sellers are up to 150 million ISK, and the sellers in JITA are now up to 155. So here we can clearly see that there is a turnaround, an increased price for the skill injectors. The daily alpha injector finally, after reaching pretty much a one-year high point of more than 62.5 million, is now going back down a little bit in price. 62.6 million for the sellers though, that is staying quite up there, and 58 million for the buyers. So the average price at the moment is a little bit lower, but we're staying above 60 million, which is definitely above average. So looks to me like there is decent demand for skill points in general in the game at the moment, and plex are hesitating to go even higher. They're in a sell opportunity. I think if you look at this entire chart, they absolutely are, but there might be better times ahead as well if something were to happen in Nulsec. That's at least my speculation. Next up, we have the mineral market that's going to be at 8:30. Like that. As always, we'll start with titanium that is bouncing off of the 4.5 ISK mark. I'd say that is both good news and bad news. The bad news is it's not going up more. I would love to see 5 ISK before I start to say we're back on average prices and we're able to sell, but will that be in the cards in the near future? I don't know. Without Nulsec action, I don't think so. So they are now selling for 463. It's up a little bit from last year. The buyers are up to 454 as well, which I think is good news for potentially going up in price. But look at the reaction from the market, of course, in the last couple of days. 2 billion, 2 billion, 2 billion. That is someone obviously trying to unload quite a few of his stocks, and we still have more orders that are close to a billion ISK as well, a billion units, excuse me. That is quite a lot of titanium to go through. Immediate attempt at taking advantage of the slightest increase in price. I think we can expect that unless a big mineral sink opens up, which at the moment ought to be again a Nulsec war, that we will constantly be bouncing around this price range, and any increased price, you know, there's plenty of supplies out there that will be ready to bring those prices back down right away. For pyrite, after reaching a 1-year low, is now bouncing back a little bit, but we went close to 3 ISK, so that is crazy low. Of course, just like last time here, we had slightly increased volumes after reaching such a low point that some investors decide to buy some pyrite. Currently selling for 347, buyers coming in at 312. The biggest loser, well, next to Isogen, those two minerals have really not done well in the last year. And again, in my opinion, they either need a CCP intervention, which I'm not sure that they want to do, or more destruction in the game before we can see an actual comeback for these. Next up, we have Mexalon. That is also bad news, of course. Now, finally, excuse me, after actually doing really well over the last year with an average price of around 70 ISK or even more than that, Mexalon is now down to less than 60 ISK, and there seems to be no stopping. So we're at a 1-year low. It's selling for 57.86 ISK and the buyers are coming in at 55.78. That's the lowest we've seen in the whole year. That's not the best time to sell. If you really need that liquid ISK, of course, then I personally wouldn't blame you, because it's just a general trend in the mineral market at the moment. We are down in prices so massively that who knows when this is going to end. Again, you need that outside factor to come in, whether it's a war or CCP, to change something here. And I don't really see that on the horizon myself, or you need a lot of patience to gamble on that happening. And if you need the ISK now, well, you know, sell that Mexalon. At least you're still getting 55 ISK for it, which is a decent amount for the volumes, I think, compared to some of the others, which are quite terrible. Like this one, Isogen, you can clearly see 8 months straight, or 10 months in fact, straight down here. And now again, another 1-year low point for less than 15 ISK. That's crazy. 15.31 for the sellers, 14.18 for the buyers. So yeah, very, very inexpensive Isogen. The trend in minerals is pretty obvious. I think, will it be confirmed by Noxium? That's the one that held on to 300 ISK for a bit. I was quite surprised by that. Is now actually in the process of breaking that on the downside as well. Not a 1-year low point, but the fact that the sellers are coming in at 291, buyers at 281 is bad news. I think the 300 ISK mark has not been defended, and I think that means that in the upcoming weeks we will go down in price for Noxium again as well. Looking at the volumes here, another 2.3 million, 1.5 million, 5.6 million units. They keep coming in, keep competing with each other at these prices. And yeah, with 300 ISK in the rear view mirror, I think it's going to go down in price and start to move in the 250 to 300 range. Next up, we have Zydrine. That's going to be more bad news for people that are looking to, for a lot of ISK for their minerals. Yet another 1-year low point. 398 for the sellers, 377 for the buyers. So now we are below 400 ISK for Zydrine. This, of course, is due to the potential output from HiSec now with the moon mining that's happening. And again, if you look at the numbers, 800,000, 1.3 million, 4.2 million, 16 million units, that's a pretty big sell order all of a sudden that I think is going to keep pushing the price back down. But yeah, it's just players mining out the moon, bringing those minerals to the market and trying to sell them at the best price. It's so many of them at the moment. Compared to the destruction of minerals, that this is the result. Megasite, I think you already saw that from the ticker, is even in an even worse place. I think it's just going straight through the 400 barrier down to 375. So Megasite currently selling for 390 is even less than Zydrine. So that's a reverse world again. 390 for the sellers, 364 for the buyers. But just look at the last 24 hours here, full front page, all of these orders, 3 million, 2.5, 3.3, 1.5, 1.3 million. You know, there's plenty of sellers, and then we have that massive volume increase. Let's see if we can spot anything out of the ordinary here. Not really, but there is this massive volume here that is crashing the price down. I think it's just more dumping of Megasite that happened a couple of days ago that is continuing to drive the price down, and in fact now Megasite is lower than Zydrine. Crazy situation. The mineral market, yeah, Mining is popular in ETH. Lots of people do tend to complain when they are vocal about how boring mining is and that you should never mine. But I think that these numbers show that despite that fact, there is popularity in it. There is of course this increased efficiency as well, with the Rorquals mining up a storm in Delph, in the Imperium, every single month. They keep coming out with crazy numbers, and this is the result, of course. Finally, we have Morphite that is also staying pretty low at the moment. Not the lowest point, but the sellers are coming in at 8,400 ISK, the buyers at 8,200 ISK. If you see this dip below 8,000 on the buy order side, I think you've got a clear buy opportunity. But again, spikes here are dependent on nullsec destruction, on big moves there, on actual war, and that would be a winter war, would actually be what would shake up this entire market, I think, both for Plex and for minerals. Next up we have PI coming in at 1530. Let's see if the deployment of the patch of the expansion with of course the new structures will now have had an effect on these markets. We see the broadcast nodes that actually went to a 1-year low point just before the expansion is clawing its way back, but nothing too special. 2.1 million for the sellers, 1.9 million for the buyers is quite reasonable. It's actually still very inexpensive, so the broadcast nodes are still a touch below average. They did move back up in price a little bit. Construction blocks are staying below average and also basically not moving too much in the last week. 10,700 is for the sellers, 10,000 for the buyers. This is basically the market with despite pretty large volumes. Sometimes it's the buyers that are winning out, that are getting those cheap construction blocks from impatient people. Then you've got the lower end of the daily average. Sometimes it's the sellers that win out. Then you've got the higher ones that win out on the day. And the average price is actually pretty flat, below average for the year. Consumer electronics is actually crawling up just a little bit, but staying around the average price. So 13,500 for the sellers and 12,500 for the buyers. I think buyers are on average, sellers a touch above average. Now here we've got the coolants. That is good news for us PI producers, I would say. Unlike our minerals and our mining activities, at least if we're doing PI for fuels, we are looking at 1-year high prices. Coolants back to 11,000 ISK here, sellers at 11,400, buyers at 10,500 for the year. This is obviously well above average. Great time to produce and to sell coolants, which I did last week, by the way. Enriched uranium, same thing, working on an even stronger high point here, 14,000 plus, 15,000 ISK almost for the sellers. We're running out of this, so if you can make, or if you have enriched uranium stocks, you're definitely selling them at the best price of the year. 14,100 for the buyers. That is forced up quite a lot as well, so clearly showing a lot more demand than supply in enriched uranium at the moment. The integrity response drones, that is pretty okay, although a very tiny opportunity. So what we see here, just like with the broadcast nodes, is that in early October, we did go to a 1-year low point, and you could have easily grabbed these integrity response drones for 2 million ISK. Went up to almost 3 million ISK, but it is very short-lived, this spike here. We are back to average prices at the moment. So there was a bit of a trade, right? 2 million to 3 million, that's not bad. But you had to really be on the ball to get the best price for these. 2.6 million almost for the sellers is still above average. 2.26 million for the buyers is 2.3, a touch above average still for integrity response drones. But for a massive trade, that was not happening on this expansion. Mechanical parts related fuels staying well above average as well. 12,200 for the sellers almost, not bad. 11,200 for the buyers is a great price for mechanical parts, I must say. Very easy to produce on barren planets. Nuclear reactors, finally a little bit of life in this. That is very nice. So if you manage to buy here, you'd need quite a bit of patience, but you could have bought these for less than 90,000 ISK. The spikes keep going higher and higher. That is very interesting. Sellers are now coming in at 113,000 ISK. It's been quite a while since we've seen that. 102,000 for the buyers as well. Finally up above 100k for some buyers. Very nice little spike here for nuclear reactors. If you had the patience, I don't think I did. I don't think I actually still have my nuclear reactors, but if you had the patience and you bought in June, July for 80 to 90,000 ISK, this is actually a nice little sell opportunity at the moment to grab your nuclear reactor profits after a very calm summer and then very muted spikes and some dips, I would say, after the summer here. We're finally seeing potentially a bit more action in nuclear reactors. Organic mortar applicators, advanced PI materials, settling right on its average, so no visible impact from the expansion. 1.1 million for the sellers, 1 million for the buyers, just a touch above that. Not much to say. Robotics next. I actually want to take a look at robotics next. This one, fuel-related PI coming back to well below 100,000 ISK at this point. The average price for the year, or a bit below that. So the first one, the first PI material related to fuels, that's actually dipping down a bit. 97,500 for the sellers, 94,000 for the buyers of robotics. Around average, maybe a touch below that. Still okay to sell, but not as good as coolants, enriched uranium and mechanical parts. Self-harmonizing power cores, after a bit of speculation, is basically staying quite on its average as well. 2.2 million for the sellers, 1.9 million for the buyers. We're actually still buying this very, very cheaply. Superconductors next, really crawling out of the hole. I sold too soon. I think I sold around 13k now. Currently selling for almost 15,000. Very nice little spike in superconductors, and the buyers are up to 12,800 ISK. So selling well above average, buying a bit above average here. Very nice spike for superconductors. I produced this on some storm planets. I think it is in Detal. Very easy to make that way as well. And I sold a bit early, but still at a great price in my opinion. Test cultures next, nice little spike as well. But is it maintaining that? Sellers are now for the first time already, but so decently quickly actually selling below 10,000 ISK. So we are on our way back down. Buyers at 9,200. Nice little spike. If you bought for 7k, sold for 10k. Really good trade, but be careful. I think that the sell opportunity will not last very long. And finally, we have wetware mainframes, the only one that basically manages to crawl to an above average price for the advanced PI materials, selling for almost 2.5 million, buyers coming in at 2.3 million. If you made those investments here September, October, as low as 2.1 million, you've got a tiny trade. But I must say, quite a surprise to me. It kept being on my radar, and I actually did make a tiny little trade in integrity response drones. I just had the luck that I took this one as my investment for the advanced PI materials. But I thought we would see more movement with more structures coming out here. So I'm quite surprised to see that a lot of these have basically not moved, and only wetware mainframes and the integrity response drones actually had a slight sell opportunity to grab some profits. Next up, advanced moon materials at 2230. Like that. So let's see if there's been any movements here. I personally don't think so, because we're not really seeing the war drums beat in null6. So here is crystalline carbonite actually dipping to a 1-year low on today's data point. Are we below 150? No, sellers at 158, buyers at 134 though. So if you're looking for a buy opportunity, well, try the buy order here. I think you're selling below this entire chart by quite a lot, and potentially that is not bad. Ferrite carbide is continuing to edge slowly up, so not much to say there. I don't think 172 for the sellers, 159 for the buyers. Still very low in price, but not as good a buy opportunity as the crystalline carbonites. Next up we have the titanium carbide. That's also slowly up in price, but not by too much. So I think here 182 for the sellers, 173 for the buyers. Pretty obvious that it's not in buy order territory, but not in sell order territory either. Next up we've got tungsten carbide, same picture there, not a 1-year low point, but still pretty low. 205, 206 for the sellers, 194 for the buyers. So here most of them have recovered a little bit from their 1-year lows. Crystalline carbonite with a lack of buyers is actually still in that buy order territory. Next up, we've got the metamaterials. Here is the photonic metamaterials. That is the very same pattern here, not the 1 year low point, but jumping up to just around 20k, 19,843 for the sellers, 18,000 for the buyers. I would say we're not at the buy opportunity, that's over, but we're definitely not on a sell opportunity yet either. Plasmonic metamaterials, very same picture there. For the non-linear metamaterials, we're actually going down a bit more, but know that we have played with 20,000 before as a low price. Still 25,000 for the sellers, 24,500 for the buyers. So I would say again, I can't really tell you to make a move on this one either. And then terahertz metamaterials actually going down in price. Not a low point, but again, let's keep 20,000 in mind. 21,144 for the sellers, 20,450 for the buyers, and we are going down. This would be the one that I would keep an eye on in the next week. If you're looking for that investment in metamaterials, then this one potentially, if it goes down just a little bit more, you'll be able to snag that for less than 20k, which would be, of course, below the entire chart, which would be not bad. So crystalline carbonite, right now you could still put a buy order there. For the metamaterials, I would just wait a little bit longer, and perhaps the terahertz metamaterials might have that potential. For the that's basically, I think, the lack of conflict in nullsec shining through here as well. Very stable market at pretty low prices. Next up, the rest of the advanced move materials. Here are the fermionic condensates. After doing really well, holding on to 100,000 ISK in the last couple of weeks, finally dropping off now to less than 90,000 ISK on average. 88,400 for the sellers, 83,800 for the buyers. That's a pretty sharp drop off. The one worry would be knowing that we've been down to 80k before. Don't catch a falling knife, but here we can clearly see, if we take a look at the last 8 months or so, that we are well below average all of a sudden, and that this could be an awesome buy opportunity. Definitely one to keep an eye out for. Perhaps you can start buying in small volumes at this point. If we go even lower, have some ISK ready to keep buying and to lower your average prices. But this is clearly a sharp drop off that you can take advantage of, in my opinion. Ferrogel next, same picture, also going down in price, but not at the very 1 year low point just yet. 43,000 for the seller, 42,500 for the buyers. Not as pronounced as this one, so I would say you can look into it, but I wouldn't buy at this point just yet. I think we can go lower. Fullerite's up in price just a touch to 1,000 ISK. 1,000 for the sellers, 900 for the buyers, so that's a buy opportunity that is over. Hypersynaptic fibers also dropping off very sharply. Again, not the 10k that we've seen before, 8-9 months ago, but 11,600 for the sellers, 11,200 for the buyers. You can definitely consider this. So this is very interesting. Quite a few of these know a very sharp drop off. Nano transistors are holding at 5,000 ISK, so here I would definitely have a wait and see approach. Phenolic composites is bouncing off of 2,500, just not willing to play below that price apparently. 2,635 for the sellers, 2,535 for the buyers. That is interesting, that strong resistance to 2,500 ISK, where the first half of the year we traded below that all the time. Now we're trading above that all the time. So if we do see a drop off here below that price point, you might look for that opportunity. And finally, we have the ceramic fibers. After reaching a 1 year low point a couple of weeks ago for less than 400 ISK, look at that sharp increase. All of a sudden 600 ISK for the sellers, 579 for the buyers. That is a very short order trade that we could have made here. I didn't buy, I don't think, did I put up? Let's take a quick look at my ticker one. No, that's unfortunate, because that was pretty obviously a 1 year low point below the entire chart. That is something that I should have made a move on the ceramic fibers, to be honest. So that's a bit of laziness or too much risk aversion on my part. But this is a very nice little trade in like 2 weeks that would have been really, really awesome. And if you look at this volatility and you look at what's happening here in fermionic condensates, in the, let's see here, the hypersynaptic fibers, that looks very interesting potentially. So yeah, advanced move materials, quite interesting. So very muted when it comes to the carbonites and the metamaterials, but quite some movements and potentials, I think, in the other advanced move materials this week. Next up, the Tech 2 ships, 2850. let's go over these. Unfortunately, right, with the metamaterials and things like that, very muted and below average. I don't think we'll see too much action here either. The Aries is stabilizing around 30 million ISK here, 29 for the sellers, 28 for the buyers. I would wait for a lower showing on the chart before I start making a move on that. The Basilisk is continuing to stay around its 1 year low point of 230 million ISK, 228 for the sellers, 212 for the buyers. So that again, just like last week, if you can grab one from the buy orders, I think you're doing a good deal, but you will want some patience. The Cerberus next going back down towards 200 million ISK, 218 for the sellers, 190 for the buyers. I would think that perhaps the Cerberus has its place in the abyss now. If you're looking for that PvP option to counter the Gila, I think that the Cerberus could actually do it with Tech 2 resist. It's larger missiles, generally speaking. I think that it could have more damage application than the Gila. So something like a passive Gila with a very active Cerberus, yeah, might be a good counter. So I would have thought perhaps more interest in this ship, but nope, it's still very, very cheap. The Crow next, after reaching a low point of 27.5 million, is bouncing up just a touch to 31 million for the sellers. Is that a massive trade? I personally don't think so. The Guardian, you can see that from the ticker here. I tried to buy one at less than 200 million. I was too late, so it didn't trigger. I'm gonna have to remove that, but yeah, 235 for the sellers now, 210 for the buyers. So people did make a move pretty much after my EVE talk here on the Guardians. We've got some increased volumes, and we have the price that is definitely not below the entire chart. So for this week, if you're still looking for that Tech 2 logistics investment, yep, look at the Basilisk 212. Try and grab it as close to that price as possible. If you look at this entire chart, if we try to generate 212, that's over here on the chart. Yeah, that's really a good opportunity to grab a cheap Basilisk. I tried to do it with the Guardian at I think 299 or 199, and unfortunately I failed, but it would have been a great trade even now, right? If you could imagine that I would have bought the Guardian at 199, I could already sell that for 235. Even with taxes and things like that, you're making a profit on that trade. Heretic also up just a touch to an average price, not much to say there. The stealth bombers were very interesting, and this one is actually dipping very quickly to less than 30 million ISK. Sellers at 28.4, buyers are already at 27.8. I personally wait for these 3 buy orders to be gone, and then you've got Hans for less than 25 million. That would be the dream to step in on that stealth bomber market. The Ishtar, after reaching a 1 year low point, slightly increased volumes and back up in price. So I think that here again, 251 million for the sellers, 238 for the buyers. The buy opportunity is over, right? The market spotted it and grabbed it, just like with the Guardian. A bit of investment happening. The Manticore, after bouncing up to 40 million, is back down as well. Sellers at 31.8, buyers at 30 million. For the Manticore, 30 million is the very bottom of the chart. So if you are looking for that stealth bomber investment right now, yeah, I would say that you can try to grab a Manticore as close as possible to 30 million ISK. The Munin flat at 250, 250 million here, 262 actually for the sellers and 215 for the buyers. That's a pretty wide margin. That's quite surprising, and the average price is a bit closer to the sellers, but definitely between the two, which is very interesting. 215 for the buyers. If you absolutely want a Munin investment, you can try it. I would personally wait for an actual drop-off in the chart. The Nemesis slowly going down, but not enough for my taste. 29 for the sellers, 27 for the buyers. I'd need to see 25 to be honest, because we've seen that before. Oniros staying down at 180. Yeah, very cheap, 169 for buyers of the Oniros. Definitely again below the entire chart. The big problem with the Oniros is the volumes. There's just not that many of them being sold. You're much better off with the Basilisk and the Guardian if you're looking for that active trade in a logistics cruiser. The Purifier, same thing here, massive spike and then back down to a pretty low price. Buyers, that's where we need to take a look at. Not bad, 28 million for the sellers, 26 million for the buyers. If we could get rid of these two and buy Purifiers for less than 25 million, I would personally try to grab a couple. Saber, just staying really on its average price, not much to say there for me. Scimitar, same thing actually, doing really well to stay at 230. So buyers of that are at 215. I think you've got a better chance than with a Basilisk, in my opinion. And then we've got a Stiletto that is bouncing off 27.5. And basically, again, a bit of investment when we reach that 1 year low point. But you're a bit too late for that one. So the Tech 2 ships, quite a few of them, in my opinion, in buy order territory. Quite some volatility in the stealth bombers, so take your positions there. I think that can be very rewarding. But other than that, the general trend is again pretty low prices at the moment, and we are dependent on some nullsec action for some change there, I think. Next up, the Tech 3 ships at 34.40. Like that. As always, we'll start with the destroyers, which last week did really well, went up in price and managed to hold on to that mostly. So here we've got the Confessor actually giving in a little bit from the price of 40 million ISK, currently selling for still 39.9 million, not bad, and the buyers at 32.3, which means that the market is currently in between those two. So you've got impatient sellers that go straight to the buy orders, and you've got people that are willing to buy Confessor straight from the market at almost 40 million ISK. Of course, the margin between these two is too small, in my opinion, to make a trade on that. But if you manage to buy these for 30 million, you can still sell them for close to 40. The Heckgate is actually dropping off very quickly. Oh, I didn't look at the volumes here. Nothing too crazy on the supply side. So the Heckgate is actually dropping off from 45 million to a bit less than 40 million ISK. So selling for 39, buyers at 35. A bit more supply, but still nothing too crazy. So I personally would expect a stabilization at this price range. Next up, we've got the Jackdaw, very flat at 40 million ISK. Sellers are coming in at 39, buyers at 36. Again, a bit more than the Confessor, but not by too much. So I think we can indeed expect stable prices here. And then finally, we have the Zwepel, not the Legion, that is landing on 35 million ISK. And again, 37 almost for the sellers, 33 for the buyers. And the volumes are definitely not crazy. So we are basically stabilized at a premium price from the bottom at this point, and we'd need to see again actual usage, actual destruction of these ships, I think, to actually see really higher prices. But we don't expect our low points to be tested again, as long as we don't see all of a sudden sellers coming in with hundreds of ships, which is not what's happening at the moment. For the cruisers, we've got the Legion a bit under pressure, but not by too much. 159 for the sellers, 146 for the buyers. Again, the volumes are quite absorbable by the market to keep the price in this range. The Loki is giving ground from 250 down to 200 million, 196 in fact for the sellers. And here we can see that we've got a larger pool of ships, although the sellers themselves are not that high in volume. They are competing quite heavily for sales of Lokis at the moment, and so we are down to less than 200 million for the sellers. That's not bad. If you're looking for a Loki, if you look at this entire chart here, you're finally being able to grab some for less than 200 million. They are the flavor of the moment when it comes to Tech 3 cruisers, of course. Now we get a Proteus also after reaching a decently high point of, let's see on the chart here, 190. We are going back down, 170 million for the sellers, 146 for the buyers. So this was definitely a trade that we could have made here with a bottom right after the destroyer bottoms. That was not bad. I didn't make a move on that myself. It always felt very risky to do so, but now the volumes are there to be for higher prices. So I don't think that we'll play with the 130 bottom anytime soon, unless we see again hundreds of ships coming in. Tengu, same thing, did manage to go up to 200 million almost, and now down to 176. So from the time that I checked on the ticker, I think Tengu was at 177. Those were the sell orders. So we do have a decent supply coming in, as you can tell here in the last couple of hours. 177, 177, but here 176, 176. A couple of them coming in all of a sudden at an even lower price, but it's still well above average, and it's 1 and 1, so it's not like we've got hundreds of Tengus either. So yeah, the tech tree market in general is now out of oversupply danger, in my opinion. I mean, it's possible that there are still massive volumes hanging around somewhere out there, but what's actually happening on the market is a healthy market that has found its trade range, and that must also be said. If you do expect these ships to be in the meta for nullsec, and you do expect a nullsec war, that's two big ifs, of course, then on the buyer side of things, you're still primed for a very big increase in price all of a sudden, of course, because the volumes just aren't there anymore. If nullsec all of a sudden needs confessor fleets or wants jackdaw fleets, well, the people that need those ships in emergency are gonna have to buy them from the market. There's a couple hundred of them here, so you are still set for a massive spike if those two things do happen, which is perhaps a pretty tall order, but who knows. And then for the extra product this week, we are going to take a look at the faction cruisers, 39.45. The reason, of course, is with PvP in Abyssal Dead Space. I am personally a little bit curious to see what's happening with those ships. So we've got cruisers, faction cruisers. We'll start with the Navy factions. Perhaps I am more interested in the pirate factions myself here, because of course Tengu, no, not the Tengu, but the Gila is there. But let's start with the faction warfare stuff. Here is the Ogre Navy issue that went to a 1-year low point of 40 million in November and is now working its way back. So that's a Mar coming back a little bit, selling already at 55 million ISK. Buyers are coming in at 47. So if you'd manage to buy some at 40 million, you've got a nice little trade in there already, with potentially more on the horizon if this keeps coming. Caracal is the Caldari one, pretty stable at an above average price of more than 70 million, 75 million for the sellers, 65 for the buyers. So that means pretty expensive. Caldari faction warfare should not be on the winning hand. Oh, and actually the cheap ones means that Amar was winning out, and we might actually be seeing the turnaround. So the Ogre Navy issue is up in price a little bit all of a sudden, 83 million for the sellers, 52 million for the buyers. But that one is a bit too stable and weird for me to say that you should do trades on that based on faction warfare. Omen Navy issue very flat at the bottom. So if here the Ogre Navy issue is an indicator, then perhaps the Omen Navy issue, which you can still buy for 50 million ISK, which is below the entire chart, might still be a slight buy opportunity. You can already tell at the tail end here that we are going up in price. Osprey Navy issue is actually also going up in price. That's interesting. 84 million for the sellers, 74. Well, that might actually be related to the Abyss. It's still not as expensive, I don't think, as a Gila, and it's still a very capable ship, actually, the Osprey Navy issue. I was quite surprised by that myself. So well above average at the moment. That's 1 hour, I think. Let's hope so. Site fleet issue going back down in price, so that's very unusual, right? Site Navy issue below average, that's a Mar. Ogre Navy issue, well, actually no. There we go. Site is going down, Amar is going back up, so that indicates that, yeah, but Minmatar was low, should actually have been higher. Kind of a weird one. Stabber, is that more logical? No, also low. How the hell does the Ogre Navy issue get to a low point when it's clearly the Minmatar that have been on a low point for months? If anyone can explain that to me, I would love to hear it. Must be like a massive amount of LP that was still floating around there, or a massive amount of ships. Here on the Minmatar side, while they should have gone up in price, they didn't, or a lack of demand, of course. But yeah, even the Stabber Navy issue was down in price consistently to a below than 50 million price. Now it's 55 million for the sellers and 46 million for the buyers. So the Amar Minmatar market's a bit screwed up here, in my opinion, in the last couple of months. For the Galente Caldari Vexor Navy issue at bottom prices here, look at that, 57 million for the sellers, 52 million for the buyers. Very, very cheap at the moment. That makes more sense, right? You've got Galente very cheap winning out. You've got Caracal actually well above average losing out at the moment. So if you're looking for that trade, yeah, maybe Vexor Navy issue and hope that the Caldari can start to come back in faction warfare. Now, what we're really here for, of course, the pirate faction ships. Let's take a look at those. Here is the Ashimu. Look at that, going up in price. I think, yeah, Ashimu potentially not bad for Abyssal PvP. Also went down to 1 year low point of less than 60 million ISK, is now selling for 80, almost 79.5 million. Buyers coming in at 71 million ISK for the first one. So very, very nice increase in price in the Ashimu. And I think that this is actually expansion related. It's too volatile to be the mark. The Cinnaball, not so much, but definitely trading above average as well. 174 for the sellers, 160 for the buyers. I think also a very capable ship, 555 slot layouts. I think means that it can be very versatile. It's always a bit of a gamble, and of course, if you want to take that in the abyss and hope that you're countering whatever comes in on the other side there, it's usually going to be Helas, so maybe not the best option. The Ortrus is actually still really low in price, and I'm quite surprised by that, because I would think that the Ortrus could do very well against Helas. So it is at 198 million for the sellers, 179 for the buyers. It is of course also quite a bit more expensive than something like the Ashimu. So the Ortrus actually at a low point, despite still being almost 200 million ISK. That may be why. Why are you going to look for a more efficient ship to counter the Gila when it's just as costly? Take a Gila then. Phantasm up in price a touch. Okay, interesting. Selling now for 110 million and buyers at 91.6 million, but I think that this is mostly market action. We're not seeing that same Ashimu spike that we saw before. So then we've got the Stradios, that's actually at a 1 year low point. 174 for the sellers, 163 for the buyers. I tried it during the mass test, and one of the comments said that, yeah, the Stradios is a nice ambush ship, but if you're going up 1 against 1 and you've got to brawl it out, you're not going to have a good time coming out on top. So you need to surprise your enemy and have that advantage of being there, having the drones right on top of the target right away, and then being surprised. Basically, the covert ops part of the Stradios is its strong point. So not the best option, and definitely very cheap at the moment. Now, if someone can make a fit that actually works against the passive Gila, you do have a pretty relatively cheap hunter here for around 165 million. Next up, we've got the Gila at 250 million, the most expensive one that we've seen here so far. That is, of course, Abyssal Dead Space interest that is making this ship so expensive. A bit up in price in the last couple of days, definitely up in volumes as well. So we might actually see a bit more destruction. 260 million for the sellers, 246 for the buyers. And then finally, we've got the Vigilant, that's up in price a little bit as well. Also a very good option in my opinion, and maybe a bit more PvP capable. 216 million, cheaper than the Gila as well, 188 for the buyer. So the big move is on the Ashimu. If you are of course looking for a faction cruiser to try and run cheap Abyssal Dead Space filaments and then get into the PvP, the Ashimu, excuse me, was an obvious choice, because you could have bought 4 of these for a single Gila. So yeah, very understandable and nice little spike due to the expansion. And yep, the Gila extremely expensive, and now with extra cool skins in the store, is still the ship of choice actually to run Abyssal sites at the moment. And that's it for this week, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.